Hey, it's Shabes. This is about an anime that was at war with itself. It's a tale of two studios that represent two schools of thought: dynamic creative expression and mechanical content generation. This is a balance that all art and artists come to terms with sooner or later, especially when it becomes business. Oftentimes it comes down to whether you make it in the way that you want to, or make it in the way that you have to. Which is why I can't say what anime I'm talking about, or include it in the title or thumbnail, because it's so obscure, it's basically YouTube poison. Believe me, I know. I've already made 15 videos about it.
So just get off my back.
It starts with a different anime, because the show I'm talking about is technically a ripoff. Manga Nihon Mukashi Banashi was the original, by Group TAC. Here's how it worked. Most episodes were only 12 minutes, so they aired 2 per week. That's why there's 1,471 episodes on MAL, even though it didn't last that many weeks. Each episode adapts a classic Japanese folktale, and it could have any art style they wanted. However, given that it's the same small group of artists on a rotation, several episodes would have similar character designs or backgrounds, so it's not a completely different style every single time. But that's actually a good thing and will be useful later. The sound department would be a lot more uniform, applying a more limited soundtrack and sound effect bank, and at least for a while, only one actress doing all the voices and narrating. Eventually they'd introduce a second voice actor to play the more masculine roles, but personally I find that to be a weaker choice. I think having one person voice everybody and narrate reminds me of Rakugo. It's a dramatic and dynamic method of storytelling set to gorgeous visuals. Manga Nihon was wildly successful. It ran for almost 20 years, and when an anime finds success, imitators are not far behind. But it would be uncharitable to call all of these rip-offs. Those last two were actually made by the same studio that made the original. Instead of folktales, manga ijin are miniature animated biopics of people like Vincent van Gogh, Gregor Mendel, and Babe Ruth, while manga kodomo focused on Japanese children's literature. And just because you might not have heard of it before doesn't mean it's an obsolete format. There was a remake of sorts in the 2010s made by some of the same staff that ran for over 250 episodes. And the Umi no Folklore Town project is a similar anime sponsored by the Nippon Foundation Ocean Innovation Consortium to teach kids the importance of the ocean. The key, I think, to Manga Nihon's success was how it wasn't simply about the story being told, but the method in which it was being told, with a focus on art and performance. Another long-running anime institution that the West has barely heard of, Mina no Uta, was a platform where hundreds of animators were able to express their art accompanied by music. The more modern-day equivalent would be all those animations you see on YouTube as music videos, or fan animations set to utaite. Anime like Space Dandy, where each episode is handled by a different director and conforms to their style, I think fits into Manga Nihon's ethos. And general OVA anthologies like Neo Tokyo, Robot Carnival, Genius Party, even today with Star Wars Visions, they're not just about telling good stories, but it's to celebrate the artistic talent of the people who told them. It's this elevated level of enjoyment that's centered on the craft, regardless if that story is profoundly new, or as simple as the Three Little Pigs. That being said, not everyone aims for that level of artistic ambition. Some people just want to make a living creating art, but aren't interested in all that artsy stuff, or perhaps aren't exactly capable of producing that artsy stuff. That was Dax's motive with manga Sekai Mukashi Banashi, changing almost nothing from Group TAC's original idea except one word in the title. So in this case, it's stories from all over the world and not just the Japanese ones. I know that Dax intended to copy off Manga Nihon's success because Manga Sekai was their second attempt at copying Manga Nihon. The first one was Manga Furusato, and yeah. Well, they weren't all that good at it. The designs aren't appealing or stylized. I don't know if I could even call them character designs with actual consideration to synergy or consistency. They're more like character drawings. Backgrounds are just practical. They lack any interesting texture or color or shape. Like, yeah, that's certainly a house and a forest. And animation is hardly accomplished on a basic practical level. Forget about doing anything extra or creative or expressive. It's pretty much the diametric opposite of Group Tack's philosophy. It's like Dax doesn't care how well the story is told so long as they produce 10 minutes of animation to fill their broadcast slot. Dax thinks this is as straightforward as drawing the characters, moving their mouths for the dialogue, cutting to each character as they speak, and that's it. This is just content generation. And while I find that hard to discourage when that's just what you have to do sometimes as an artist, there's probably a reason why the only footage that exists of the show are TV recordings from a Hawaiian broadcasting station. Content generation is ephemerate, useful for only a short period of time before falling into obscurity. But what if I were to purchase an outsourced studio and disguise it as my own cooking? Delightfully devilish, Dax International. Now these guys know how to make damn good anime. Osamu Dezaki, Yoshiaki Kawajiri, Rintaro, Manabu Ohashi, Toshio Harada, Masami Hata, even Yoshifumi Kondo from Studio Ghibli. Each of them would go on to shape anime as the wonderful medium it is today. Only one studio could house all this talented madness under one roof. A madhouse, if you will. Unlike Dax, Madhouse embraces Group Tack's philosophy on artistic experimental anime. And that's probably because Group Tack and Madhouse happen to be relatives of sorts. Both studios were formed from ex-employees of Mushi Production, the legendary studio founded by Osamu Tezuka that completely changed the world of Japanese animation with Astro Boy. Many of these guys on both Manga Nihon and Manga Sekai cut their teeth on Mushi's art house juggernauts from Jungle Taitei to the Anime Rama trilogy. It's no wonder where they got all that visual inventiveness from. The sheer variety of Manga Sekai is so large that I can't properly articulate how much fun I had watching it. None of this has been subtitled yet because of course it hasn't, but at least for now, a lot of it is available on YouTube, and I doubt you need subtitles to understand Beauty and the Beast or Sleeping Beauty. Maybe you don't have that much experience with Masami Hata or Manabu Ohashi. I wouldn't be surprised if you hadn't even heard of them. It makes me want to watch so much more from this period and from this group of artists. I think hidden gem has become an irrelevant term at this point. This feels more like exploring unseen territory. You know that phrase, too late to explore the world, but too early to explore space? It's not how I feel about anime. It doesn't matter if these are fairy tales for children, it's all about how well these stories are told, and you can feel the quality on display. I kept track of my favorite episodes, and I made a much longer video talking about them exclusive to my patrons. And this is the cutest shit ever. But Madhouse's time on Manga Sekai didn't last forever. From here, the video is going to diverge in two. First, I'm going to talk about this show's production history, and then I will explain how we know all of this afterwards. There's no clear explanation for what happened to Manga Sekai, and the only version of the anime that we have is missing the ending credits for every single episode. The staff list is incomplete, and was reassembled with old TV recordings, magazines, and personal testimony. But I think even a casual viewer could tell watching the show, it changed dramatically over time, arguably for the worse. The following narrative is only speculation. At episode 28, Madhouse's involvement was cut in half, only responsible for every other episode. The other half of the episodes would be done by who else but Dax themselves. Since the art style still changes every episode, an average viewer probably wouldn't even notice. Except, well, Dax is still not very good at this. Especially when you compare them to Madhouse. So the quality starts to be a lot more uneven. According to Madhouse's website, the creators in charge of each story competed with each other, creating works with different tastes each time. At first this sounds like, oh, the creators within the Madhouse studio would compete with each other. But given how Dax inexplicably decided to start making episodes alongside them, the so-called creators in charge might have meant a little more than an in-house rivalry. During this span of the show, Dax started to try something a little different. Episode 42 was actually a sequel to a previous story. It's the first time 2 episodes had any continuity. And then 4 episodes later, Dax made it a trilogy. The real change, however, came 4 episodes after that. Son Goku, Part 1? With Part 2 airing next week. And by making 2 episodes in a row, Dax broke that back and forth pattern they were going with Madhouse. After that, Madhouse officially left the production. But Dax still wasn't done. I mean, after all, Manga Sekai had lasted them nearly a year by now. It was doing well. And now with Madhouse gone, Dax could really shake up Group Tech's formula. Now, instead of 2 half episodes with different art styles, Dax would tell stories like Carmen, Romeo and Juliet, or Alice in Wonderland in one whole episode, but still divided into 2 half episode installments. They'd spend that whole fall anime season in this new format, only adapting half the number of stories they used to. They even aired their own version of Ie Nakiko, Nobody's Boy Remy, which is the very same story that Madhouse was adapting that same season. Look, I'm sure this stuff wasn't planned maliciously, but like, imagine settling into this brand new Dazaki anime that was gonna tell this whole big grand story over the course of an entire year, 50 episodes. And then this episode from a different anime airs a few weeks later and just summarizes all of it in 20 minutes. The gall of these people. This pattern wouldn't last, however. After 13 episodes, Dax modified the format again, which would last for the remainder of the series. Now, the A part would be a unique story, like before, and the B part would feature those longer serials, only in 4 to 5 installments instead of just 2. These were stories like Tom Sawyer, Wizard of Oz, and Daddy Longlegs. Dax wasn't always the responsible party for those A parts. Several Madhouse employees actually came back to help Dax out. Dax dedicated 13 B part episodes to an adaptation of Les Miserables, the end of which marked the end of year 2 of the broadcast. This was followed by an 11-part Princess Sarah adaptation, where during half of that run, Dax would resort to recycling older Madhouse episodes for its A part, instead of creating new ones. Yikes. New A part episodes did eventually make a return by the end, but the B parts were reduced back to 4-episode arcs, and after 2.5 years, Manga Sekai Mukashi Banashi finally ran aground, finishing at 127 full-length episodes. It's a shame, really. They had such a good thing going with Madhouse, and then out of nowhere, Dax starts to intrude on what they contracted Madhouse to do. So you probably have some questions, or at least I hope you do, and you aren't just taking what I say at face value. I find the sleuthing here to be very interesting, and I don't care if it's going to bloat the video, because things don't seem to add up at first. Madhouse's website says they left episode 52, but how do I know episode 28 is the turning point? One of my sources claims episode 28 is when the OP changes and Madhouse is actually left out of the credits completely. But in doing my own research, I might have found an alternate narrative. The answer, I think, is in the title cards, which changes styles multiple times throughout the series and features the characters of each of the 3 OPs as it changes. For the first 2 episodes, or 4 installments, they actually made unique title cards for each story. Dax would later use this idea for their serials like Oz or Daddy Longlegs. Episode 3 is when they start using this title card, and then from episode 6 to 28 they use this style of title card, all of which have that angel character from the first OP. Episode 28 changes to this style. This angel is not from the first OP. And what's this? A version of OP1 without Madhouse credits? This is where narratives diverge. My source is saying that OP and ED were revamped by Dax to be bland and deny Madhouse's vital role in the series. But given the existence of this version of OP1, my guess is that this version is what would play during the episodes Madhouse wasn't involved with. And so when Madhouse leaves altogether at episode 52, that's when OP2 debuts, and it happens to correlate precisely with the title card of episode 53. None of this matches what's on the DVD release. It has OP1 last till episode 80 and OP2 till episode 124. But again, these are the same DVDs that don't retain any ending credits at all, which we do know existed during the broadcast. So that just explains the actual points when the OP changes, but how do we know that Madhouse only did half the episode starting with episode 28, before leaving altogether on episode 52? It's as simple as looking at the staff, but how can we do that without the ending credits? Like I said, not all of the ending credits were lost, and if you remember, not every episode is completely different from one another. One of my favorite episodes in Manga Sekai is this delightfully silly and cute rendition of Golden Goose with these really derpy, charming character designs and animation. It's goated! I don't know what to tell you! These character designs are by Tetsuo Yasumi, and they're so distinctive that you can tell that he worked on episode 16B, 31B, and even episode 69A, which was after Madhouse left. Japanese Wikipedia's list of staff is far from perfect. It only lists scriptwriter and episode director. But looking closely, you can see a pattern in the episode directors who worked on the even-numbered episodes versus the odd-numbered episodes. The odd-numbered episodes are directors that you would also see in episodes 1 through 28, which was all Madhouse. But the even-numbered episodes are directors that only appear past episode 28. And then, starting in episode 52, that group of names from the even numbers became a lot more prominent. Those names, which we can presume are from Madhouse, if not elsewhere, like Freelance, they don't appear on episodes that tell the serialized stories, like Daddy Longlegs or Oz, just the A-part standalone ones. This is still only a guess, unfortunately, but an educated guess of which ones were Dax episodes and which were from Madhouse. And beyond all those numbers and empirical evidence, just like how we can identify Tetsuo Yasumi from his iconic design, so too can we identify employees at Dax. I don't know about you, but these episodes feel an awful lot like Dax's last anime, Manga Furusato. Dax has definitely improved since then, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't call any of these artistic experimentation. The real question here is, why did Dax do any of this? Were they actually trying to compete with Madhouse and just pushed them out when they saw they couldn't compete? Now, if we weren't already, this is when we're in complete guessing territory, but I still want to give it a try. I think the most appropriate answer is, it wasn't malicious like that at all. If that were truly the case, we would have heard about it. The truth is probably far more mundane. 52 episodes is probably all they had signed up to do in the first place. Consider what Madhouse did afterwards. Nobody's Boy Remy came out very soon after they left Manga Sekai, as an answer to the other trend at the time. World Masterpiece Theater would cover similar stories as Manga Sekai had, like Dog of Flanders. I think that's why Dax changed the show as they did. They wanted Manga Sekai to be both a long-running serial like World Masterpiece, and an omnibus show like Manga Nihon. But by diluting the strengths of each franchise by trying to do both, Manga Sekai failed to find success pretending to be either of them. I can't feel too bad for Dax though. Their next attempt at ripping off Group TAC was Manga Hajimete Monogatari, a hybrid of live action and animation. And it was actually their greatest success yet, lasting 6 years and over 300 episodes. Good for them. It leaves me in a conflicting place with Manga Sekai. It's some of the best short-form anime I've ever seen. But the whole package is not an easy endorsement. This is about an anime that was at war with itself. It's a tale of two studios that represent two schools of thought: dynamic creative expression and mechanical content generation. This is a balance that all art and artists come to terms with, especially when it becomes your business. Often it comes down to whether you make it in the way that you want to, or in the way that you have to.